Hi, this is Amy, and in this short video I'm going to share some strategies that you can use right now with Pinterest to drive more traffic to your content. Pinterest can be a great way to drive targeted traffic to your content. You can reach a lot of really great demographics with Pinterest because more than a fifth of US adults actually use Pinterest, and that number is growing, which is something important to look at if you are investing your time and effort into social media strategies. 71% of Pinterest users are female, and that is also really important to remember because it is definitely targeted and oriented more toward female users, but more and more men are using Pinterest. The top three categories of Pinterest are do-it-yourself and crafts, hair and beauty, and design, which is sort of a catch-all that can refer to graphic design, product design, home decor and design, but basically things that lend themselves really well to visuals. Now that you have an idea of what type of people are using Pinterest and the types of things they are looking at, let's take a look at some of the best practices. Curate, which is a startup company, actually examined over 500,000 pins, and they were able to break down very specifically what types of pins work best for getting more traffic to your content, for getting more repins. What they found here is really interesting. They say you should be colorful, so your pins should have, your photos and graphics you're using in your pins should have a lot of color. You don't want to show human faces. Those without human faces are repinned 23% more often, and you should go with a spare background. Red, orange, and brown perform best, nearly 2-to-1 over blue. And you want to maintain moderate light and color. Very light or very dark images are not repinned as often. Let me show you a few different examples here of some pins that work and that have been very popular. This one is a recipe for a white wine punch. And this is grown because the recipe itself is actually really easy to use. You just have a handful of ingredients. And what you can see here is it's very colorful, it's composed nicely, and you can also see the setting where you would have the punch, so it's just very evocative. This is another example of a DIY pin, and it's demonstrating an idea. As I mentioned before, the DIY category is really popular because it really does lend itself well to images. So this is showing how you can melt crayons and create sort of a melty color effect. And this pin was actually pinned over 64,000 times. Those are the types of pins that work best, and in terms of actually putting together your pin, Dan Zarella from HubSpot, and HubSpot is actually another really great resource for finding what's working right now on social media. He also dug deep and came away with some of these takeaways here. First of all, taller images work best. Because of this, infographics actually work really well. And what they found with infographics is that a lot of infographics will have compelling headlines, but you actually have to click through to see all the infographic content because it's all sort of crammed into the image. And I'm going to show you an example here. Here's an example of one. This is about screen printing actually, but it kind of goes through all the steps. And if you were looking at this on Pinterest as a pin, it would be very difficult to see what was actually happening unless you clicked through. And that's sort of the point with these. So if you're looking to maximize more of your traffic on Pinterest, you will hopefully have something that you can do that will be in those categories of do-it-yourself, beauty, or design. You know, we're talking about step-by-step ways to do something or highlighting something. And you can actually create your own infographics with templates. There's a lot of templates here, and I'm including some of these here. I mentioned HubSpot. They also have some free template designs. You can also get them done on Fiverr. There's a lot of people on Fiverr who will create a basic infographic for you for $5. And then what you should also have in the template is a link back to your content. So you might want to have like a website listed on there or your opt-in or something along those lines. The other thing you can do is you can create taller, thin ads that look like infographics. For example, this is I wouldn't really call them advertised, I guess, ads. I would say just things or types of content that can look like infographics. For example, here's one where they're showing how to apply lipstick the right way. So it's like a step-by-step how to apply lipstick, a hair and makeup tutorial. So there are a lot of ways that you can create infographic type of content, step-by-step, how-to tutorials. Those tend to lend themselves really well to that. Facts and figures and statistics, you probably have seen that a lot on infographics as well. That also works well when you're building this type of content. If you have a book, you could also even highlight different parts of your book, different areas. For example, even if you're doing a fiction book, you could actually highlight character descriptions and have that built up sort of more like an infographic. So there are a lot of ways that you can use these types of infographic looking images, and not just infographics, but also other types of images such as the ones we just discussed earlier, where you have a lot of color, you're not using faces, they're really nicely composed. You can use a lot of those types of images as well to drive traffic. You can actually find me on Pinterest at pinterest.com/Amy Harrop. And feel free to check out my blog or subscribe to my blog feed or my YouTube channel. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next training.